Hello there. I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to this new episode, for which I haven't found a title yet, actually, at the moment of recording this video. But obviously, by the time it is published, you will get to see it. So it appears that it didn't take that long. Republicans, especially Trump voters, who are not all Republicans, obviously, are starting to regret their votes. Well, I mean, the first thing first, I kind of want to give kudos to Trump here because, I mean, most politicians would pretend to believe in what they ran on during the campaign for a little bit of time after they get elected. But that's not what Trump did. As soon as he got elected, he already started distancing himself from some of the promises, the very promises that got him elected, among which we can cite the reduction of grocery prices. I mean, the guy had barely been elected, and he had already been he had already started to talk about the fact that reducing the the price of groceries was going to be a difficult and almost impossible task. Well, that's not what he said on the campaign trail, obviously. So, yeah, and then he started talking about all sort of things that he that he didn't that he didn't even mention during the campaign, like his desire to annex Canada and Greenland and what else? What's the other one that he wants to take? Ah, yeah, the Panama Canal. I mean, he didn't say any of he didn't talk about any of those things during the campaign trail. So yeah, I mean, I gotta give him kudos for that because, like, as soon as he found out he was elected, he was like, "Oh, this populist bullshit, I can just throw it over my shoulder, and and now I can just take off the mask." And it's actually funny because this phenomenon of mass regret among Trump voters started before he even took office. So that's kind of hilarious. Um, the other thing that's remarkable about this Trump presidency is just how swift he is, right? Like, Democratic presidents have gotten us used to being a little bit lethargic, being a little bit slow to institute change, and trying to do everything by the letter of the law, and like and not skipping any steps, and doing everything the way everything in as incremental a manner as possible. Well, I mean, this is I think this is a good thing that Democrats should copy. He just came in, and he just doesn't care. Is it legal? Is it not legal? Is it constitutional? Is it not constitutional? He doesn't care. He just signing into law, and taking actions about stuff that whose legality is not even certain at this point. I mean, you just have to look at the recent actions from Doge. We'll come back later because, as I said at the beginning, although I haven't found a title for this episode yet, it's certainly going to have to do with Elon Musk, obviously. So we'll return to that later. So one thing about all these actions and the regrets that has followed among Trump voters really begs the question, like, well, to all those people that are regretting, what exactly is it that you're regretting? I mean, the guy was pretty clear. He didn't exactly make a mystery of what the things he was going to do. The whether we're talking about the mass deportations, whether we're talking about the tariffs, whether we're talking about his attitude towards immigrants. Um, I mean, none of that was a surprise exactly. I mean, there were already talks that his proposed measure to deal with inflation, that is tariffs, which are by themselves an inflationary measure, there were already talks and discussions from economists that were almost unanimous, which is something rare to see among economists, that those measures were going to increase inflation. So why are we surprised that inflation is up and that prices are up? This has been the most baffling thing about this phenomenon of regret, and I gotta be honest, it's almost cheapens, the weight of the regret itself. I mean, it's one thing to have been played by him, because at this point we can reasonably use that word play during his first term, but to be played by him as he's trying to campaign for a second term, knowing how he governed, knowing the temperament he displayed during his first term, and then after that claiming that you regret. I don't understand that. But in any case, in if we look at the measures that he's put in place, and especially the way he's gone about putting in place those measures, we we can quickly recognize that this presidency, at least in the way it announces itself to be, I should remind that we are less than 1 month into his second presidency. Well, it's kind of the materialization of the ultimate Republican's ideal, right? And I mean, I have a theory, and it might be controversial, but to me, I've always condensed the whole Republican platform to 3 words: "Fuck the poor." And it's that, it's I often give the example of, those painters slash magicians, people that would go on a stage and then they would start painting, drawing a picture, and they'll start painting or whatever, and the painting itself wouldn't be clear. It wouldn't be clear to the audience what the painter is exactly painting, and then at the end he will sometimes rotate the canvas, and then it will reveal, for example, the face of somebody that's well known, or the face of an animal that's well known, or or the outline of of an object that's well known. In any case, the painting, after receiving just that flip, just that rotation, gets all of its meaning, right? So the meaning was already there, but the thing that was missing was that last piece, which is the rotation. Well, that's kind of how I see that theory of that I just enunciated. Fuck the poor. It's the moment you understand that, the moment you you commit to your mind that this is the Republican platform, well, all of their proposals make sense. Because when they pretend to be the populists, when they pretend to be populists, it's kind of hard to reconcile their declared populism with some of the measures that they advocate for that actively hurt the working class. But as soon as you commit to the mind that their philosophy is kind of fuck the poor, well, everything makes sense now. And so you couldn't get a more fuck the poor administration than this one, right? Because the mask is off. He doesn't need to pretend anymore. And like I said in my introduction, I actually kind of find it a little bit funny, but I mean, he hasn't played demagogue for too long. He hasn't played populist for too long. As soon as those election results rolled in, he was already taking his mask off. So you couldn't get a more fuck the poor administration than this one. And I mean, there are a lot of factors that make that observation evident. I mean, and it started. I mean, I almost I almost wanted to say that it started on day one, but truth is that it started before day one. But it officially started on day one with the exposition of during the inauguration ceremony of all this porteur, all this variety of all this, I don't know, this display of billionaire power. Of course, we'll all remember um, the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, some of the most influential of them, especially with the presence of Meta's CEO, um, SpaceX's CEO, or Tesla's CEO, Amazon CEO, Google CEO, and yeah, I mean, it's. I almost want to say that things were announced from the get go, but again, uh, that shouldn't come as a surprise at all. Um, I mean, everything was announced, um, and then you have Doge, all right, which is currently engaged in an enterprise that's just unprecedented, all right, like just I mean I like to remind people that um, there was this famous cartoon dating back to, I think it is the late 19th century or early 20th century, but there was a this cartoon, or rather this caricature, I think by I don't remember the name of the author. I think it's Otman something. Um, and it's like I said, like I think it dates back to either late 19th or early 20th century, and it's basically pictures a bunch of barons basically standing behind the halls of the Senate, um, and looking over the senators as they are, legislating, and the barons are displayed to be rather large, disproportionate, and the senators are displayed to be rather small by comparison, a lot smaller, in fact. Um, so I remind that to say that it is not exactly a novel fact or a novel reality that money has a lot of influence in politics, especially since that was made legal by the Supreme Court. But what's unprecedented this time is that you have this Baron class, that just decided to take the commands this time. There was no more barons looking over and making sure that the legislators, that the elected representatives are doing what's best for them. But this time, they've just taken control of the machinery, and and that brings us to Doge and what it's doing. I mean, it's just engaged in a lot of frankly weird and, but most importantly, borderline unconstitutional slash illegal actions that, on top of that, actively hurt the American people and the American workers and the American public workers especially. I mean, we saw it with what they did with USAID. We saw it with what they are currently trying to do with the Department of Education, right? They literally froze payments in an illegal manner because I mean, must I remind you, it's obviously illegal what's happening with Doge, because what they're doing that is fundamentally illegal is that they are going around the power of Congress, right? The Treasury Department doesn't have the power to retroactively review what Congress has already approved, you know? They cannot block, they cannot, once a certain item has been approved by Congress, they cannot disagree with Congress. What they get to do is make sure that the items approved by Congress are paid the appropriate way, but they cannot put a stop to them. Like this is just a clear violation of the principle of separation of powers. And I mean, Trump, man, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on with the man. But suffice to say that what's happening is just, I mean, it's an unprecedented control of the, I mean, forget the executive. I mean, maybe we are talking about the whole entire republic, right? Because we are already seeing that Doge has been hit with a few orders coming from the courts, ordering it from stopping some of the actions it's engaged in. And at the moment where I'm recording this podcast, Dodge is just deciding to ignore them. Not only that, but to double down and accuse the judges of being against the republic or something, of being against the nation. And we have Elon Musk on his Twitter calling for the impeachment of the judges that are demanding him to respect the separation of powers. It's insane. Again, it's unprecedented. Once again, like I said, it is not a novel reality that power has a lot of influence, that money has a lot of influence and power over politics, but this flagrant and blatant disregard for even the rule of law, this taking over of the American state machinery at the expense of the rule of law, that very thing that made America what it is just incredible. And it's what's surprising is that it comes from an immigrant that doesn't understand that the reason why that country that he immigrated to, that country that gave him everything he has, is because they sort of ran on an honor system and still decided to honor the rules that they chose to enact for themselves. And those include the separation, the separation of powers. And you have this immigrant that comes in and that just takes a dump on this sacred American tradition of the separation of powers. It's incredible. So all that leads us to wonder this whole democracy thing, as Jon Stewart was recently wondering on his latest episode of the Daily Show. Will we have it back? Will you have it back? Will we have it back? I mean, when we see that the system seems to experience a glitch whereby the judicial branch is unable to correct the oversteps of the executive branch, i.e., Doge, can we be sure that that same judiciary will be able to stop the current players in the executive from, I don't know, overturning some of the other fundamental American traditions, such as, I don't know, the pacific and peaceful transfer of power? Can we be sure of that? I mean, we already know from lived experience. I will invite you to commemorate what happened in January 2021, specifically January 6, 2021, with the attempt to overturn the election by Trump and his MAGA base, his MAGA cultists. So we that event, that day actually reminds us and confirms to us that Trump and his sycophants are capable of having the intention to overturn the election, right? Like this is not a debate anymore. So we know that they can have that intent and act on it. The reason why they were unable to do that last time was because the guardrails actually did function, actually did work. But can we be sure, with the blatant disregard for the power of the judiciary, that this time it's gonna work again? If, say, they decided to, in the best case scenario, let's say, go from a 2 terms limit to a 3 terms limit by ignoring the Constitution and all that it requires for a constitutional amendment to pass, for example. Or in the worst case scenario, if they don't even manage to do that but just decide to completely disregard the Constitution and have Trump run again, what will happen? What will happen? So we should really be asking ourselves, and I know some people may say it's too early. Again, it's been less than a month since Trump has been sworn in, but we could really wonder. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's unreasonable to really wonder if the democracy thing is something that the American public can have back. So, that said, regardless, irrespective of all the things that the Republicans are currently engaged in, again, I made that point earlier, but the Democrats, I really invite the Democrats that to have more of an attitude of courage and strength, because I've seen too many of them abdicate, we could say it, to the Republicans and all the anti-Republican things that they're doing, and I put anti-Republican in quotes here, as in not against the Republican Party, but against the Republic, the United States Republic. So I invite them to show more strength and courage and actually call out all of the crazy things that we see from the Republicans and Doge, you know. They shouldn't continue on this path of abdication, of just letting them do whatever they want because quote unquote they have the presidency, the Senate, and um, the Congress, close the quote. But they should really be more vocal in their opposition, and they should show the American people that one, this is not a state of things that they should accept, and second, they should try to use all of their powers to try to undo the things that are straight up unconstitutional or illegal. We cannot have a republic working like that, where one camp just decides to uh, blatantly ignore the laws. That cannot work. That cannot work. But we will have an occasion to talk to go more in detail about some of the recommendations that I would make towards the Democrats in this time where they are playing opposition. Um, but we'll have the occasion to discuss it some other time. Um, but for now, for now, I, I I guess the my final reflection, and or perhaps my final observation, is going to be that I have come to distinguish between two types of Trump voters. And depending on which one you are, you should really take the lessons that you are taking in right now seriously. Um, so the first one, actually, I should make it three to be more precise. I guess the first one is the true believer, right? He doesn't care. He just likes Trump, right? I mean, Trump could decide to hurt his own family with his dog, and he would cheer that on. In that respect, he's kind of, it's kind of mentally, I would say mentally deficient, right? I mean, once you display that level of fanatism, I think it is fair to call you mentally challenged, right? That means that you've lost the ability to actually recognize where your interest lies. And for any living being, forget about human beings, but for any living being, um, I think we should really question a lot about, your persona on even on a biological level. But anyway, so that's the obvious category of Trump voter that we can place out there. But then we have a different category of Trump voters, which is the dishonest Trump voter, and I call him the dishonest because just like the first voter, he is he knows where his interest lies. So it could be that he likes Trump because he likes the tax cut, or the deregulation, or the destruction of the social safety nets for some reason, or any of those reasons, or maybe because he just likes Republicans, or something like that. But the reason why I call him dishonest is because a lot of time these voters will be aware that they'll be aware the of the fact that those a lot of those measures that Trump wants to enforce are detrimental to a lot of people, right? So, for example, they know that the destruction of the social safety net is going to hurt poor people, for example. But they will argue, they will pretend to believe that this is not the case. That not only will, for instance, the destruction of the social safety net not be a complete disaster for the poor people, but that it will actually benefit them. Now, obviously, such a person, I mean, the dishonest Trump voter will know that, but I will still pretend and publicly affirm that that won't be the case, and ju- just to make, just to let the pill be swallowed, basically, just so that their policies, which are unpopular, because I think it is safe to assume that it is unpopular in the United States, the policies that would want to hurt uh, people that are economically challenged. So that is the reason why I call him dishonest. And obviously, for that dishonest person, just like for the first group of voters um, that I enunciated, um, he wouldn't have any reason to have any regrets, because everything that's happening would be what he wanted to see happen. So uh, there wouldn't be any reason to regret. Mass deportation, fine. Tariffs and increase in inflation, fine. As long as they have their tax cuts and deregulations. So that's a second one. And the third one is the people that I would categorize as, and I say it as nicely as I can, but the dummy. And this is the person that actually votes against his or her or their own interests, you know, and who does so for reasons as silly as, for instance, to own the lips, right? And a lot of times, those people are, they have an unhealthy obsession with the concept of wokeness, and it might even be argued that they are more obsessed with wokeness than people that are actually on the far left when it comes to social issues. And to those people, I mean, those are the people that, I mean, beyond that, you could obviously like create distinguish other categories of Trump voters. I guess for the sake of my demonstration, I'm going to stop here, because I want to specifically address the quote unquote dummy. But it's, what did you not see? You know, I mean, let's give Trump his credit here. He didn't really try to hide any of the things that he's doing now. I mean, his campaign was one of the worst campaigns that any candidate has ever run. You know, I mean, it was just whining, moaning, bitching, complaining, just seeking revenge on some imaginary enemies, and anyone that it had ever had the balls to tell him that it was wrong or something, like judges and pollsters, and it's just incredible. And I almost want to ask, what particularly appealed to you during that campaign? I mean, I made a whole episode previously about why I thought Trump won, and if you go and watch it, you will actually see that in my analysis, I don't particularly think that it was because of anything in his campaign, other than one thing, and one thing only, which is that he was able to to do what I referred to in that episode as naming the monster. That is, he basically had the latitude to tell the country that the president at that time Joe Biden had failed them, and he was going to do the exact opposite and stuff. And people, and it was clear that the emphasis was on the economic aspect of the presidencies. It wasn't so much on the social aspect, which I thought, which I'm still convinced didn't really matter in this election. Now it's funny now because I mean, even that economic thing, which is the reason why he got elected in the first place, is something that he just completely lost interest in. Right? Like now, it's just petty policies and uh, trying to trying to destroy the administrative states. As and I'm directly quoting a phrase that's been used and reused and abused by many in his circles, in his circle, including his vice presidents. So I mean, to that type of water, I mean, I just want to extend an olive branch here and say let's not do this again, okay? Next time, let's vote based on policies and not on petty motivations or a desire um, to be eccentric, you know. So I guess that's where I will end. Obviously, as I'm speaking right now, there are a lot of events that are unfolding, and many of the phenomenons that we discussed during this episode are continuing, and some are evolving and taking forms that are even more concerning than they already are right now. So I will come back for another episode, hopefully very soon. But to end on a lighter note, I've been reflecting on what name I would give to this podcast, because as you noticed, I haven't named it yet. But I was thinking of politicsing. That's POLITIXING. Um, and that was the name I was thinking. So you guys let me know if that's a name you like. If it is, then if it manages to get the support of most of you, then I guess this is the name we will adopt for the podcast. So thank you very much for your attention, and on that, I will wish you a good day and see you next time. Bye bye.